Happy New Year! Welcome to our first episode of 2025. We're two guys on a porch. I'm Jason. This is Bradford. This is my hunting dog, Kimber. Here we are on this venerable occasion, dressed up because we are tasting the whole onslaught of Pappy. Some people consider this the best bourbon made, and so we dressed up for the occasion here in the den. Stick around for the episode. Welcome to Two Guys on a Porch. I'm Jason. This is Bradford. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to rate, subscribe, and let us know what you think about us.
Thanks, Jason. Very happy to be here today.
Very happy to be here today.
I am very happy to be here today, celebrating the new year. And I love being in your home, den, basement, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
You and I have shared a lot of bourbon down here.
Yes,
a lot of
indeed.
whiskey down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, great memories.
Laughs, tears, lots down here.
Oh, yeah. It's an amazing location because of all the memories it evokes, which is really cool as we go into the new year. Hey, what are we smoking today?
We are not, because we're inside. You can't smoke inside the house. Mama gets mad if you smoke inside the house. So that's, life is about give and takes, right? So we're not cold outside, and we get to drink Pappies. The downside is no cigars today.
Well,
and we also had to dress up. I mean, how often do you wear a bow tie? We look very dapper, I think.
I think we do.
Yes.
I agree. But I do say that we are not smoking today. However, we're going to save it up for right after the first of the year. We're scheduled to be on site at Mission Cigar, which we mentioned on a previous episode, because we have the Fuente y Padron Legacy cigars that we got at Mission Cigar. So we're going to go down there, celebrate with them, celebrate with our listeners in person as we smoke perhaps the finest cigars ever made.
Well, and I'll emphasize, you said it, but I'll emphasize it. You're excited about cigars, but it's nice to have an audience there, right?
Absolutely.
We usually sit around with a bunch of guys. It's not just the two of us rambling on. So this will be our first episode with an audience. So be sure to watch us, more details to come, so you can be part of that audience.
Yeah, and so today, as we drink perhaps the most unattainable whiskeys, bourbons certainly, in the world, that really is the direction of our episode, because we want to talk about the unattainable and the conflict and fight with contentment in the midst of that.
Yes, right there with greed. There's no end to man's greed.
Right. And it's interesting. I cheated before I came.
Uh-oh.
Because I had a
Did you drink some of this before me?
I did. No, I didn't. But I had interaction with a client before I came here, so we met and had a drink beforehand. And I very intentionally had Jim Beam. Jim Beam is the best-selling bourbon in the world.
Right.
Jack Daniel's is probably the most popular, and at one time was the best-selling. But I thought, you know what? I know what I'm drinking later. I'm going to try Jim Beam.
Just straight over the counter.
And you know what? It is as attainable, every man, as you can get. And I could be perfectly content with that bourbon.
Yeah.
It's good.
Absolutely. It wouldn't sell if it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, duh.
So
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's less than $20 a bottle. We're a little pricier.
Yeah. So these bottles, you don't ever walk in the store and buy these. You might enter a raffle that they will give you these bottles after you buy a lottery ticket type thing. You can win the bottles, but you are not just going to go out and just find them at the store. You have to do a lot of searching and find these. And so in this episode, you can see we're tasting the 15, 20, and 23.
Which are the only three Pappy.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. In another episode, we tasted the lesser Pappies. Technically, they're Van Winkles, but except for the bourbon geeks out there, they'll say, well, there's only whatever. It's
all Pappy.
It's all Pappy. And
right.
here again, we're not experts. We're just guys who like to drink bourbon, smoke cigars, and talk about life. And so here we are. To me, they're all Pappies. They're just different higher levels, and they're different price points. You're looking at several thousands of dollars worth of bourbon on this table, which is kind of what does that say about us that we spend that much money on water?
Well, let's put this in context for a second because, I've noted your generosity in the past, to me personally, but in general, and you and I have been involved with JDRF in the past, locally, and you, whether it's an intentional tradition or not, but you've donated a bottle of 23 for years.
Yeah, and so JDRF, just to clarify our audience, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. It's a very worthy cause.
And we both have children with type 1.
Exactly right, yeah. So it's a great cause, but, they have an auction like most charities, and they'll people donate things to the auction, and they auction it off, and people go crazy over it,
Well, and as your chief procurement officer, I found a bottle of Pappy. I think you paid $6,000 for it.
Yeah.
And you donated it to the auction, and it sold for?
Like $12,000.
That one you told me sold for 20.
Was that 20? Okay.
Yeah. Which was the most I'd ever heard.
Yeah, you're right. Now that I think about it, typically it would be around, kind of 10 to 12.
Yes.
But you are absolutely right. This past year went for 20. So when you think of it that way, and plus it's charity, people are having fun that night. They know they're overpaying, but it's for a good cause, so they're good with that.
Yeah, and so that certainly speaks to the unattainability of that. And before we taste, I do want to make one more comment, because I think this really is, once you dig into this topic, it does become hard to think about, because no matter where you are in life, you always are battling that keeping up with the Joneses, that contentment thing. And I think back to a mutual friend of ours, Billy Volick, we used to hang out with. And Billy was playing for the Titans.
Right.
And we knew how much money he was making because it was in the paper when he signed the contract. And so he was, I don't know, 1.3 million or whatever it was. And he was lamenting donating money to buy Christmas presents for the guys in the locker room, like the towel guys, the equipment guys, that type of thing. And he was like, yeah, I donated what I thought was a lot of money, but I can't keep up with, at the time, Eddie George. I mean, he's running around with a $10 million contract. Like, proportionally, Billy's probably given more, but Eddie just, lavished because he had more to do. And he went, man, there's no way to keep up. And I thought, oh my gosh, it never ends.
Well, it was Howard Hughes, who at one time was the richest person in the world, who was famous for saying, he who dies with most toys wins. And so it's this contradiction. Pretty much everybody will agree that money doesn't make you happy, but then we all run around like money makes us happy.
Good
so
point.
we don't really we don't walk our talk. We disagree with that, and so we all fall in that trap of discontentment and greed, and so there's again no end to man's greed. So.
Well, and that's why I bring up that Jim Beam story, because I could be content with that, but I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to taste.
Indeed.
This.
Well, so it's it's the forbidden fruit, right? Everybody else talks about it. You don't get to try it. You want to try something that nobody else gets to try. And so one reason why we're doing this 3 bottles here, why not just make 3 episodes of this, right, and milk it for what it's worth? People have long argued that the 23 and 20-year-old Pappy are not worth their price, that you get a bounce up from the 12B lot
right
to the 15, but the 15 is just as good as the 20 and 23, but you're talking several $1,000s less in cost with the 15-year. So we're going to find out tonight. We're not going to embarrass ourselves with another blind tasting test. We did pretty poorly on that last time, but it
was rigged.
It was rigged.
It was rigged.
Yeah, it was rigged. But tonight we're going to taste them directly, and so we will certainly give our share of thoughts. So this is 15-year. The coloration is it does go up there. You would think obviously staying in the barrel longer it'd be darker, and it is.
Well, and the proof on these is 107. So They are not particularly watered down.
No.
90 on the 20-year-old.
Yep. 95.6.
So
Oh, I'm sorry, 95.6 for the 23, to clarify.
now I just tasted the 15. It is phenomenal. How would I do in a blind taste test? I have no idea.
That's good, though. Yeah.
Well, let me, and just to give a brief history, this is distilled by Buffalo Trace.
Right.
They also do Weller, which is a hugely popular and almost unattainable bourbon. They're less expensive, but they're still really pricey, upwards of $1,000 for probably the CYPB, the most unattainable of that group. And again, we're not talking about suggested retail price. And, that's something worth pointing out.
Acquisition price.
Yeah, I digress a little bit because people say, oh, the distillery's making all this money. No, they're not.
No,
they sell it for the wholesale price to whomever.
Yeah, it's like scalping tickets.
Yeah.
If you are a season ticket holder and Taylor Swift happens to have a concert there where your football team plays, you can now sell your football tickets to Taylor Swift fans and make tons of money.
Yeah, the brokers are making a killing,
Yeah.
but the distillery's not making any more money off of
No.
it, regardless of what that market does.
Pappy has one reason they've increased their popularity is they said, okay, great, we're becoming popular, but we're not producing any more. This is it.
Yeah.
And so it's the old supply demand, or just because the people couldn't get it, people were demanding it more. They wanted to get
Yeah,
it.
and if I remember correctly, the 23-year-old is 8,000 barrels a year. And we're talking a distillery that makes millions of barrels of other expressions. Their basic Buffalo Trace offering would be that. But here's what's interesting. Buffalo Trace has one wheated mash bill.
Yep.
One. It's the same one that they use to make Buffalo Trace, Weller, and Pappy. And so when you taste this, you're effectively tasting the same thing that's made, same recipe, to make each one of those. However, it's really the other factors that are involved. Talk a little bit about what those might be.
Yeah, we've talked about this when we talked about single barrels, right? It's the barrel itself. They all have the same type of barrels, but some react better than others. Which rick house they're in, the position they are in the rick house, what temperature changes they see. If it goes from hot to cold, that's going to mix into the barrel and influence that flavoring a lot more. And then also, it's the distiller. This is where they make their money. They taste the barrels and they mix those barrels, and that's how they come up with it. Julian Pappy Van Winkle, he used to work for Weller.
Right.
And so that's where he cut his teeth and went out on his own. So it's similar cooking styles, if you will. But it's amazing how different one bourbon will taste from one barrel to another barrel. The same bourbon, they will taste so different, and that's what we get here.
Yeah, and so they'll cull certain ones out, and it becomes the Weller 12.
They're so good. Their palates are so good. They can pick out, okay, this barrel over here is a little sweet. We'll mix this one over here with that, and they mix those barrels. As opposed to the single barrels, that's just that, single barrel. But with these bottles here, these are not single barrels. Their distiller is mixing it for a very specific taste, and they know what they like, and they know what their public likes, and that's how they mix it.
Well, and your point earlier about the 15 being maybe the best one, not the most popular necessarily, but people feel like the others have been left in the barrel too long. You get too much oak.
Yeah.
And, to each his own. We're drinking great bourbon. How do you argue with it, right?
Yeah, and I guess, when you go to Scotch, you talk about the peat, the dirt, that dirt taste in Scotch. For bourbons, it's the oak taste. I mean, it's that vanilla, caramel, oak, leather.
Yeah.
Those are your common flavors there. All right, so enough talking. Let's try this.
I've been drinking while you've been
well,
talking.
you
I don't
haven't.
know what you're doing.
No, talking too much. Let's drink. I want to drink. So this is the 20-year-old
We can just light that cigar up.
Yeah.
You hadn't changed your mind on that?
I would love to, but we would. I would have to find another place to sleep tonight. Can I go over to your house to sleep tonight?
Well, it reminds me of when we got together in your garage one time to make sure we could smoke when it was cold. I'm not sure how good of an idea that was because we couldn't see each other.
Yeah. And the smoke just wafted up.
Oh, it didn't go anywhere. It just swirled around our heads. Yeah.
So that didn't work out as well.
So what do we have here? This is the 20.
20. I like. We did it with different glasses this time. That's something different. It helps us keep it all.
I will say, we've tasted a lot in just the short time we've done this, and this has just one of the most pleasant noses. I think back to our blind tasting, how good that Blanton's smelled, and it smelled better than it tasted. It was still really good, but the nose on these is just phenomenal.
I agree.
Yeah, even if you don't have a chance to taste them out in the world, if you see somebody drinking one, just ask to sniff it. It's worth the sniff.
How does that? Just picture that.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, can I sniff your drink?
Let me sniff that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think that's going to go down quite how you picture it.
Yeah, somebody's going to say, "How big a boy are you?"
So I just took a taste of the 20-year-old, comparing it to the 15. This is a step up. I would be honest with you. This is not my first time to have Pappy, and I would have told you I like the 15 better of the 3 in the past. But as I'm tasting it tonight, there's a less in wine you would call it less of a tannic taste. This is more of the finish is a smoother finish, and it has a better nose to it, as you mentioned. It has more of a full leather nose to it.
Yeah, and I go back. I was curious because the way that 20-year hit me initially was, I don't think it's as good as that 15. And so I went back and tasted. I had a bigger swallow, the 20, to double check. And then went back to the 15, and I like that 15 a little better.
Do you?
Okay. I do. I really can't tell you why. It may be that it's a little less oaky. To me, it goes a little smoother.
Interesting.
So,
and admittedly, I do like oak.
But you get into the Woodford Reserve where that's such a signature of theirs, and it's too much. We've talked about like they're double oaked. It's good, but you have to really like the taste of oak to try that one.
Oh, sure.
And that's not my thing. Yeah. So you're back to the 15.
Yeah,
doing a little comparison.
You disagree with me, so I respect your wisdom, and so I'm going to go back and check myself. Although I think you're wrong.
That's okay. You've been wrong before about me being wrong, so that would be okay.
No, the 20's better. It's the finish that's the difference.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the nose, the initial onslaught. It's good, but it finishes, the 20 finishes better.
Yeah, and see, if somebody were to say, would you rather have the 15 or the 20? I'd take the 15 as a preference, but I'm not turning down either one.
Yeah, exactly right.
All right, here it is.
Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year. The 23, the Pappy 23. This is, we talked about how unattainable this is. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Why is that? It's one of those things like I once gave somebody, and it wasn't somebody I knew well, a bottle of 23-year-old Pappy as a gift. It was one of my partner's daughters was getting married, so the son-in-law gave him, the future son-in-law, engagement party, I gave him a gift. I gave him a bottle of 23-year-old Pappy. I bought it at the store there on West End. This was a bunch of years ago.
You say, I know, it's literally laughable now that you could have done that.
But why, so it's amazing to me that Pappy is what it is now, that you can't do that and you have to overpay it so much to get to it.
Yeah. I think back, this is another Billy Volick story, and I texted him. I made a shout out to him. So I don't know that he's listened to us yet, but he's an old mutual friend.
Yep, good guy.
He's moving to Italy to coach football. He says he's going to be.
Really?
He's Billy Lasso now, instead of Ted Lasso. But I think back to I think he and I were playing golf somewhere one time, and he had picked up the tab for wherever we were playing, and I finally said, Billy, I enjoy spending time with you, but you don't need to feel like you have to pay for it every time we do something. I make a good living. I enjoy spending time. You want to call and do something, I'm happy to do that with you. I said, now, if there's an occasion where I can't financially afford to do that, I'll tell you. And if you say, well, let's do it anyway, I'm going to say, okay. So it changed the whole dynamic of our relationship because he felt more free to just go, oh, yeah, well, yeah, it didn't make us financial equals, certainly, but it made the relationship more honest, that I was okay saying, no, I can't do that. And there was no harm to our friendship. It didn't change that. What it did is it made it more honest and real.
Yeah. Well, if you're wealthy and you can do things, you want to hang out with your friends, but if your friends can't hang with you and do that, you kind of almost ostracize yourself. And so being able to invite friends with you, but also taking that off the table of feeling the pressure to have to pay, it takes the awkwardness out of the situation. But, I don't know. I think sometimes people are afraid to say, hey, let's go do this wonderful thing because they know their buddies can't do that. And so that's the nice thing about bourbon and cigars. You can always share it with friends and come hang out in the porch.
Yeah, I think back to, when I think it was when I found that bottle of 23 and I found a bottle of King of Kentucky, which neither of us had heard of. And it was one of those unicorn bottles. And you were like, hey, let's crack it open because that's what friends do. And I thought, that's really cool because you could be a collector and never open it. It just gets dusty on the shelf, but we shared that as friends. Yeah. That was really cool.
Yeah. And that's the neat thing about two guys on a porch. Again, it's been a while since we talked about this on the podcast, but the reason why we're doing this is what we've always done for decades now. We hang out together as friends and talk about life, and we're not experts on this. We just enjoy having each other's company and talking about life because it's a team approach. It takes a team to get through this life, and it's good to hang out with people. And Mission Cigars, where we're going, they have that same philosophy. So, again, keep watching the episodes and look out for that one coming up. So what do you think about this 23?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it went up another step.
I mean, first of all, that's the best smelling whiskey I've ever gotten near. That was it was like, that's the most pleasant smell I've ever gotten from bourbon.
So what Pappy's, I agree, totally agree. And what Pappy's known for is their little bit of cinnamon in there. It's slight, it's a hint, but it's that oaked cinnamon taste. And that's how you would identify a Pappy. And this, in the 23, it really came out more than the 15 than the 20 year.
Yeah, it's, because I've had Pappy before, probably yours. And people have said, oh, so how would you describe it? I said, it's like drinking warm butter. It is so smooth. To your point, it's got that kind of vanilla oak, cinnamon hint. It's a different animal. Yeah. It is unfreaking believable how good this is.
So would you say this is the best bourbon you've ever tasted?
I don't know. We had Coy Hill recently.
It's pretty good.
And it may have been because I was surprised at how good that was. Yeah. But that was amazing. That was better than Willet, which was amazing. We'd have to do a comparison between that and this. Would be a good comparison. We've been drinking bourbons for years off camera. What do you think is the best bourbon you've ever had, and how would you compare that to this? I would say it's either this or that Coy Hill. Now, what's interesting about that Coy Hill, the first time you and I had it was not this year's. It was like a 22, and it was not as good as what we had recently, which was the 24, the most recent. So I would say either that or this is the best bourbon I've ever had.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I want to call your bluff. We played poker a lot, and I'm going to call your bluff because that is not what you've said in the past. And since this is the unattainable episode, I've attained the unattainable for our podcast, for a future podcast. Now we'll reach across here on the camera.
Uh-oh.
I have here
Oh my gosh!
a bottle of very old, very old.
Oh, this is amazing.
There's two varies in there. You don't want to leave out the one very. It's very old Fitzgerald. Barreled in 1957, bottled in 1969. We mentioned the podcast before. We had the pleasure of going to the Whiskey House. Whiskey House is a charitable organization that you pay. They donate tastings to certain charities, and then you get to go to their whiskey house and taste the bourbons. Great organization. We happen to be there, and we've got to taste this bottle before.
Yeah. And I will say, it was certainly the most enjoyable whiskey drinking experience of my life.
So you're folding now.
No.
Because I called your bluff right there.
I'm being specific on, I don't know if that was the best whiskey, but it was certainly the best whiskey drinking experience. And I did read something recently on the fact that, back in the 60s and the 50s when they were doing this, it was much more craftsmanship.
Yeah.
It is a different whiskey than we drink today. For one thing, when they char the barrels today, they use machine apparatus to do that. Back then, it was weather and by hand.
Yeah, so it's uneven, different barrel to barrel.
Yeah, and they did talk about the lack of consistency in that. Yeah. But there was much more handcrafting to the entire process than there is today. And so it's very possible that whiskey may be the best thing we ever put in our mouth.
So future episode will be the old Fitzgerald, the very old Fitzgerald.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like summer school, the line, they're doing the summer school, they're writing their essay. We like this very much. 500 words exactly.
Right.
So it's very old Fitzgerald. And so we will taste that. Maybe we will we'll put the Titans up head to head. Old Fitzgerald versus a 23.
Golly, that would be amazing.
So stay tuned. That would be that'll be an upcoming episode and everything.
So yeah, let's get back into talking about the battle between contentment and the unattainable.
Yep.
I think for me, I'm curious as to your take, and I've talked a little bit about it before and mentioned it today, is that attitude of intentional mindfulness gratitude. Like, yeah, these are the circumstances in which I find myself. Paul talked about it in the Bible, and I've learned to be content in plenty, and I've learned to be content in want. And I think for me, I have to remember that. My wife says, compare and despair.
Yeah. So there is a hole in every man's heart that cannot be filled with the things in this world, although we do our darndest to try. And, be it pleasure, power, money.
The Pappy 23 helps.
Yeah, Pappy 23 does help. But it doesn't. It helps fill, but does not fill it. Yeah. But there's a hole in our heart that we can't fill outside of God, and that's kind of what happens, right? I mean, we think if we obtain this, if we have this substitute, we can be satisfied. But that's the problem. We're never satisfied. It's the if you try to fill it with food, wine, money, experiences, you get the fanciest watch, the fastest car. It loses its luster. It just doesn't fill. And that's why, in my opinion, that's why I think we all chased out after the unattainable, trying to satisfy ourselves, but it's just not going to work.
Yeah, I pay attention to the collector car market, less so now than I used to, but I would go to some of these auctions or read about these auctions, and this is the most expensive American car ever sold at auction, which was one of Carroll Shelby's original Daytonas.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the next year, there was another car. This set the record for the most expensive car ever sold at auction. Oh, now we've got this. Like, it never ends.
Yeah.
And we're talking, first it was $7.8 million, and then it turned to $20 million, and then it was $30 million, and then it's $32 million, and then, they paid $50, and it wasn't at the, it never ends.
Yeah.
Like you can be a billionaire, but how big is your island?
That's right. It's there's always something else. It's the remember the back in the '80s MTV. Too much is never enough.
Yeah.
It's that same thing. It keeps on going. That you can't. There's no end to man's greed. You'll keep on doing whatever you need to do, and you think, well, if I just get this or just get this promotion or this position, you're not going to be satisfied no matter what you do.
Well, I did that in my 30s. I was eager and hungry, and I was good at what I did. And I was every promotion I could get my hands on, every piece of territory I could get my hands on. It was a land grab kind of. Yeah. I can manage that. I can do this. I can do that. And I was willing to work really hard to do that. Traveled a lot, hurt my family. I think it was a contributor to my divorce. And at the end of the day, I got where I wanted to be in that organization, and it was pretty empty.
Yeah.
Like it didn't fulfill all of those things I'd hoped to have it fulfill. And I was kind of an angry person as a result. Yeah. I didn't like myself, didn't think others liked me very much. And I've tried to be, at this stage of my career, still working in the corporate world, in the same industry, I've tried to be more authentic, more true to just who I am. And I really enjoy what I do and the people I work with. And I think to a larger degree than was in the past, certainly they enjoy working with me. That's not to say everybody does. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But I think it's a much more enjoyable experience. And I'm not focused on the what's next. I'm simply focused on, I really like what I do and the people I work with, the people I work for, and why would I change that? There's a lot of value to that.
Absolutely. Well, and God has given you your gifts to do that job, and we are meant to work, and hard work is rewarded. So it's in and of itself, the hard work isn't bad. It's like anything. If we take it to a too far degree, it becomes a bad thing. So you can't get where God wants you without hard work, but you've got to realize that's not the end goal. Or the end goal is not, whatever number, my retirement number or, a number in your bank account. It's at the end of the day, it's you are fulfilling your purpose in life that God has set out for you.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you make, because you can confuse contentment with complacency. Yeah. They are not the same.
No,
we're not talking about being complacent and, no, you got to go to work. You got to give your best.
That's right.
There's fulfillment in that alone.
Absolutely. I think for guys, at least, every guy is mowed a yard almost, and you look back and you see the work you've done, you find satisfaction. That's a simplistic thing. But yeah, there is satisfaction in work that you can't get otherwise. But again, the goal is to glorify God through your work, not to reach some arbitrary goal of position, power, or wealth.
You think we smoked those Spurgeon cigars a while back, mm-hmm. and they had, smoke a cigar to the glory of God. You think we could get Pappy to put that on their bottles, and we could we can drink this to the glory of God?
Yeah, we're going to do it regardless.
We're going to do it whether it says it or not.
I don't know much about the Van Winkle family, but we can certainly try. This is pretty awesome. So I will go down and saying this tasting has changed my opinion. I would say it keeps getting better from 15 to 20 to 23.
Best whiskey you've ever had?
I think it's going to be this Old Fitzgerald. I remember that night, and I since that night we tasted, I've been bird dogging that bottle, and I was able to find it. So that in my memory, granted, it was a little small taste. We didn't get much of it, but that was pretty good. So I look forward to putting the 23 up against the very, very old Fitzgerald.
Well, everybody, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us on the porch. Rate, subscribe, come back to Two Guys on a Porch.
Happy New Year.
Jason, there is a big-ass bear behind my head.
That bear is not complacent. He's coming after you. He is hungry. and he is coming after you.
Well, I'm looking around this room at the other aggressive animals. I think there's a large crocodile near me as well. Yeah, you've not been complacent about mounting some beautiful specimens of God's creation for sure.
Well, I like eating more than chicken, beef, and pork. So you gotta go out and get it. You don't see these on the typical menu.
Yeah, the way you've got that bear posed, I think he would have eaten you if you hadn't gotten to him first.
Yeah, exactly. It's one or the other. Yeah, it's
Kill or be killed on that one.
That thing is charging in. Maybe he's after the Pappy though.
I wouldn't blame him for that. I wouldn't blame him. Life is much better with friends, a drink, and cigar, and some two guys on a porch swag.
Let us know what your drink and cigar of choice is at twoguysonaporch.com, and you'll be entered into a drawing to get some Two Guys on a Porch swag